Hi, my name is Stephanie Evans, and this is my project on understanding cults and their impact, religious and spiritual trauma recovery in clinical practice. Purpose and why it matters. Today we're going to explore religious and spiritual trauma recovery in clinical practice with a focus on how cult dynamics impact mental health. This is both a personal and professional topic for me. I've seen firsthand how rigid, high control environments can deeply shape a person's sense of self, faith, and relationships. My own journey has given me a heart for this work, and I approach it with compassion and respect for the resilience survivors carry. So, what is a cult? One way to explain it simply is this. A cult is like a really strict club where one person or a small group makes all the rules. And if you disagree, you're made to feel guilty, scared, or like you don't belong. Clinically, cults are defined by abuse and manipulation, not by the specific beliefs themselves. That's important because many people resist the word cult. They'll say, that could never be me, or my group isn't a cult. I have felt that resistance too because the word feels harsh and loaded. So instead of getting stuck on the label, let's operationalize the word cult. That means breaking it down into measurable, observable behaviors. So, does this group control your thoughts, emotions, or access to information? Do they punish you for asking questions? Do they isolate you from people outside? Do you feel like you can never leave without losing everything? If those dynamics are present, then whether or not we use the word cult, the experience is still harmful. Operationalizing the definition can help us step past labels and focus on the actual impact on people's lives. How to identify a cult. Red flags. This also connects to the question, what if I don't know I'm in a cult? Many people don't. High control groups don't announce themselves as such. Here are some self-reflection questions that can help. Do I feel free to question my leaders without fear? Does my group use guilt, shame, or fear to keep me in line? Am I isolated from people who don't belong? Do I feel like I couldn't leave without losing my whole community or my sense of safety? If your honest answers to these questions are uncomfortable, that's worth paying attention to. Even if you don't like the word cult, these questions operationalize the behaviors that matter most. So what are the common tactics used? Cults often use psychological tactics, including behavioral control, like strict rules on dress, speech, or relationships, information control, such as restricting what you can read, learn, or believe, thought and emotion control, telling you what you're allowed to think or feel, and finally, fear, shame, and dependence, making people feel trapped or unsafe to leave. These tactics are well documented and can be measured using tools like the PAEGS, the Psychological Abuse Experienced in Groups scale. So what is the impact on mental health? The impact can be devastating. Survivors often present with anxiety, depression, complex trauma, and PTSD-like symptoms. Their social functioning may be impaired, and many struggle with fear and shame long after leaving. For those born into cults, the impact on identity formation is even greater since they have never had a chance to build autonomy outside the group. One of the most painful effects is the loss of self. Many survivors struggle with internalized shame, feeling as though they can't trust themselves or make decisions independently. This loss of autonomy and sense of self-worth makes recovery particularly challenging, but also highlights why empowerment must be central to treatment. One of the hardest parts of leaving a high control environment is the loss of community. I experienced this myself when I began deconstructing my faith. I questioned everything I believed, and I had to decide what I would rebuild and what I would leave behind. It was isolating, and at times I felt very alone. With the help of my therapist, I've learned to navigate that space and slowly build new, safe connections. That process gives me deep respect for the courage it takes survivors to rebuild their relationships and community from the ground up. This kind of loss and rebuilding leads directly into the recovery challenges many survivors face. Recovery isn't a straight path. Survivors face challenges such as deconstructing old beliefs and tolerating doubt, wrestling with spiritual struggles, what to keep, let go of, or rebuild, managing strong emotional reactions like anger, fear, grief, and betrayal. Themes of healing include grieving lost time and community, reclaiming identity, restoring agency, and reestablishing healthy boundaries. Research shows that negative religious coping, like feeling abandoned by God or believing suffering is punishment, leads to worse outcomes. On the other hand, positive coping, such as finding supportive spiritual practices or reframing faith in healthier ways, can foster resilience and recovery. Some central themes of healing are grief and loss, rebuilding identity, and restoring a sense of agency. Survivors must learn to trust themselves again, to set boundaries, and to create new meaning in life, whether that includes spirituality or not. Healing is about reclaiming one's own voice and choices. For clinicians, this means practicing trauma-informed care, screening for group abuse with tools like the PAEGS, and assessing spiritual struggles with instruments such as the RSS scale. Our role is not to tear down beliefs, but to gently support survivors in processing trauma, making meaning, and finding safe pathways forward. Some practical steps include using non-judgmental language like high-demand group instead of cult, focusing on stabilization before diving into belief deconstruction, offering psychoeducation in gentle, non-threatening ways, collaborating with clients in reconstructing spirituality or meaning at their pace. The stance should always be empowering and client-centered. In closing, understanding abusive group dynamics is foundational to providing effective, non-re-traumatizing care. Survivors of cults and high-control groups need clinicians who are both trauma-informed and spiritually sensitive. For me, this is not just an academic subject. It is a personal passion. While I haven't yet counseled survivors of cults directly, my studies, training, and personal background have shown me how powerful it is to validate survivors, sit with them in their questions, and create a safe space for their healing. My goal is to bring this awareness into my future practice, helping clients reclaim their voice and agency. Healing is possible, and as clinicians, our role is to support that process with respect and care.